Hey everyone, welcome to Two Guys Making Tribe, where Gen X meets Gen Y. Enjoy the show. All right, we are live. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd. This is our official second episode on Two Guys Making Tribe. Have myself, Dominic, and my partner, Brendan, here. But we also have a very special guest. We have Lance from the Banzai Prepping Podcast. Brendan and I got the bug for the podcasts world by doing some guest co-host appearances on the Banzai Prepping Podcast back in 2023. We had such a great time that we decided, hey, we got to make that happen. Took a little bit longer than we wanted, but we launched a couple weeks ago, and it's been a great experience. We're learning more and more as we go. We ran into a little delay with episode 1 because Brendan had deployed with Grindstone Ministries. He's back now, refreshed, recharged. So we're going to start off the show with Brendan just giving a little bit of highlights of his deployment, and we'll move on from there. All right, Brendan, take it away.
Yeah, this one was it was a pretty basic one compared to most of the ones I've been on. Tornadoes are weird. So with a hurricane, everything's touched for like 100 miles. With a tornado, it's a laser beam. It'll hit a spot. Everything it touches is utterly destroyed, and then it'll just skip around. So we were doing some properties where it'd be 3 houses back to back completely demolished, and then right next door a guy gets a couple shingles blown off or something like that. It's just
Wow.
Tornadoes are weird. We were able to help out a handful of families out there. We're able to go to an old cemetery, clean up some large trees that fell down in the cemetery. Man, some of the graves. I think the earliest one we found was 1804. It was an old cemetery. Some really wonderful people out there too. Just good, down to earth people. Some big pine trees. Was showing you the picture on the TJ busting out the 881 fuel injected chainsaw with a 5-foot bar on it. It's got a dirt motor on it. Yeah.
Massive, man. And, was there, with that size of a chainsaw, I mean, were a lot of the trees that you guys had to use that particular device on, were they completely down and you guys were sectioning it out, or there was a lot of, lean overs?
It depends.
Because the tree had to be so big.
Yeah. So that was only used a day, but we used 661s with 36-inch bars the whole time. So we definitely had more than a couple, 3, 4, 5-foot trees. Surprisingly, pines. I've never seen pines get that big, but there definitely were. So we had a couple that were standing, but they were topped. So they were going to die. So we had to drop them just so they're not a hazard, 2-3 months from now. There was a couple that were leaned on top of houses, a couple that were bound up into other trees. Tornadoes just twist all the trees together and turn them into I call it a giant wooden spring, because if you cut it wrong, it's just going to explode in your face.
Yeah.
And then a few on the ground.
Well, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand when they're doing cleanup from either hurricanes or tornadoes or any natural disaster. When you get a bunch of people out there with chainsaws that don't know what they're doing, you get so many injuries and deaths from that alone. I mean, everyone should take a good class. If you ever think that you may be going to have to use one, take a class or 2 on it, because it's so easy just to lose an arm or, take a chunk out of yourself, and you hit the right place, you bleed out in a minute or 2, and that's it.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Getting shrapnel. Well, it is not easy finding training for chainsaw.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking, and then when I did that mini deployment and I was kind of shadowing to learn, and it just only encouraged me more to trying to find, proper training. I mean, it inspired me to include it in the activity we got coming up in May to kind of expose people of the things you can do with it and emphasize that you need the training and the practice. That is still a puzzle I have to solve before hurricane season starts. Because one of the big problems we had after Debbie, Milton, and Helene, there was so much debris, so much devastation, more than any that I've seen in my time down here. Now, I know Homestead, and you were in Miami during Homestead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that seemed more like tornado-like by the visuals that I seen of the mass devastation.
They didn't have to use a lot of chainsaws because there was nothing standing.
Right.
Everything was gone. I mean, it was like wiped clean. It's like you bring the chainsaw. No, we don't need that. We just need a friggin' dozer just to push everything out of the way. Because I mean, it was flattened everything.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've seen it in a couple of videos, but I saw it in person where when you're taking some of these trees down, you had to take the bucket and arm from a tractor to brace it, okay, not only to hold it, but sometimes to push it in the direction that you want to go. Now, when Brendan brings up about the house, when you got a tree on the house, you just do the reverse, maybe chain up the tree and use the bucket and arm to pull it off or hold it so you can chop it up without damaging the house more?
So it depends on the situation. So you have, with any tree, you have tension and you have compression. So tension is where the tree is going against. So if the tree is leaning against the house, the tension is on the bottom and the compression is on the top. So if you bring that chainsaw bar from the top, you're going to pinch your bar. So you do a minor relief cut on the top. You do a minor relief cut wherever the compression is, and then you do your majority of your cutting on the tension. If in a case where the tree is leaning on a house, the best case scenario is get a mini excavator in there. Like the large one they had when you were over here that Jason was running, Dom.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can grab that tree from the top and relieve some of that pressure. That's the best case. If you don't have that, you could do a method. I call it walking it. Everybody calls it something different, where you essentially just take the tree starting from the base and then cut, 6, 8, 10-foot sections all the way up to where you're just dropping it less and less weight until it's just leaning against the house. And it's either small enough you can, if it's just brush, you can pull that off. Or if it's something, you get it where it's small enough that a couple of guys can just push it off. But Mini X is definitely the way to go in a case like that.
Oh, yeah. From what little I saw at the mini deployment, I don't know how you sit there and do it without having the machines. I mean, it's one thing to take the tree down, but man, just moving all that debris. I mean, I was just taking limbed branches out of the way, okay, with the guy I was shadowing, and man, I was just getting caught up in my neck, all up in my clothes, my face. I mean, I had my glasses and my safety goggles on that I shoot with because they cover all the way around the side. Thank God, I would have poked my eye out.
I was trying to explain to a guy this last trip. So I wear full PPE, chainsaw chaps, hard hat, face shield, ear pro. And the guy's talking about he doesn't like wearing the face shield because it just lets the sawdust hit you in the face anyway. The holes are too big. Mm-hmm. It's not made for that. It's made so you don't get stabbed in the eye as you're walking through the brush. It just the branches off. If you're looking for something to, stop dust from hitting you in the face, there's nothing for you. But it's just there to keep you from getting stabbed in the eye. And that's why I started wearing it, is because tornadoes, like I said, everything gets twisted together and you start walking through that stuff. I've had my glasses yanked off my face and thrown because you're trying to get through all this brush and these branches and whatnot.
Man. So what would you say, how much, like when you're doing these full deployments, okay, how much of it are you guys able to interact with the people and help that in the sense like, are they doing it with you guys at all? Or is it you guys just picking up some tasks and the normies are just staying out of the way?
Depends on the situation. So a lot of the times we like to take on the brunt of everything. So in a case like, I'll give you a couple different examples. So we did this one gentleman, Lonnie was his name. He had three houses on his property. It's a family property. I think he said it was in the family since I think the early 40s, if I recall.
Wow.
Great guy. It was him, his sister, and his daughter was on her way there. Ended up getting into a car accident, and it postponed her from showing up until after the storm.
Wow.
But so in a case like that, we're cutting literal hundreds of trees that are dangerous, as well as we demoed 2 of the 3 houses. In that case, it's honestly a liability for him to be there if he doesn't know what he's doing. I've never had anybody argue us. Most people are like, nope, you're good, do your thing. You get some of the people who are like, I've got plenty to do, and they run off and do something else. But some people do like to jump right in there and help us. And the other example I'll give is, so when we were doing that graveyard I was telling you about, we showed up to the graveyard and the groundskeeper was out there trying to do everything with an electric hedge trimmer and a rake.
Oh my God.
Because that's just all we had, So we were able to go out there, get that straightened away for him. And he was happy to, jump in and help pull brush and do anything like that. And then he let us know, the next 4 adjoining properties were, one was owned by the church, and then there were 3 families that were all hit pretty hard. So we went and knocked out those 4 properties over the next week as well. In situations like that, yeah, people want to help. Usually for the more technical stuff, demoing houses, things like that, some of the sketchier trees, most people are cool with just sitting back and letting us do it. Mm-hmm. If it's their property, I don't think me or anyone else is going to tell them not to help. But at some point, there is incurring liability. Now, we do this so they don't have to pay for it, It's the whole point of it is we're just trying to relieve some of the burden, financial or physical, off of them. And most of the time, people are very appreciative of it and just let us do our thing.
Yeah. Now, has Grindstone or some of the other things they've done, have you run into issues with actual government agencies telling you not to do something somewhere, or they got it kind of thing, like some of the stuff that was going on in North Carolina after the hurricanes and stuff? What have you experienced in terms of that?
A lot. So I have had personal encounters. Let me start with this. I don't speak for Grindstone in any way. I am a volunteer. That's it. I've encountered FEMA on multiple deployments. The best encounter, they seemed utterly incompetent. The worst encounter, it was blatant malice. Every time an agency that wasn't local got involved, it was always a problem. It was always a headache. They were trying to stop us from doing something. And what seemed to be like, I understand, like, hey, don't go into that building that's falling apart. That makes sense. But it's like, no, we don't want you going over here and passing out food and water because this is our zone. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me,
Right.
County guys I've never had any problem with county guys. County guys are always awesome because it's their community. It's their home, Mm-hmm. They're always happy for the help. State guys, I've never had any problem with state guys. Grindstone almost always jumps right in with county and state immediately, and we start banging stuff out. The few times I've had interactions with federal agencies has not been helpful.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I think it's one thing if they're setting up their cafeteria trailer or something and be like, hey guys, we're going to start deploying meals in the morning. Okay. Let's not have any redundancy. You guys, finish up the day or whatever, and then let us transition.
So that's the thing. Sorry, not to cut you off, but so like with Helene, FEMA would roll in and then take log of what we're doing. Okay, you're here. You're doing this much in donated goods. You have this many men on the ground, or women. So this many man hours, whatever. And then they'll just sit two guys with a folding chairs up with a little cardboard sign that says FEMA. And then you'll go on the website later and it's like, this is a FEMA site. We have this many supplies, this many man hours. It's like, no. That's Grindstone doing that. Writing it as a FEMA, distribution center. They did that to us in Helene. And I heard from other organizations that they did that to them as well. And I'm very curious if they're billing the government for the man hours that volunteers of 501c3s put in.
Probably.
Yeah, I would say yes. Okay. Well, I remember from my CERT training last summer, the way everything flows, okay, is at the EOCs, it's all about documentation. Okay. The forms filling out. So basically anything that they're distributing or doing from the volunteer man hours, they log it. The supplies, no matter what it is, it gets all logged. It moves up to the next. So from the city to the county, and then from the county to the state, and then the state to FEMA. Okay. And I think the same thing occurs when it comes to metropolitan ministries, the Red Cross. Everyone is flowing up. So the requests go upstream to get the reimbursements, and then they come back downstream. And it's kind of like
never taken a federal dollar.
Right. But I think they track everything, and I would not be surprised. I'm not saying this is fact, okay, that some organization in between or FEMA itself is tracking it so they can pull the funds, because FEMA is getting the money from some other part of the government,
well,
per se, to replace their budget.
The money all comes from us to begin with.
Yeah, full circle, right? How about I just go to Costco and get my 10 cases of rice and beans and just give them out, and let's just skip all the middlemen in between.
Exactly. That's what I always say. If you are prepared yourself, you don't have to depend on someone else. Or if you are overtly prepared, you have more than, again, like Grindstone, you can help communities, which once again takes the weight off of others. That's what Doge is doing right now, going in looking for all this waste and fraud and stuff like that that's going on, where they're billing the same thing 3 times. And that case of water that you buy at Sam's for $4, they're charging the federal government $40 for that. It's like,
as transportation and storage costs add in, right? That's the value add.
Well, and all that paperwork you got to fill out, that takes 6 people just to fill out that paperwork.
Yeah. Well, that kind of gives us a segue into some of the conflict zones, okay, that are occurring right now. So the 2 major ones we have is Ukraine and Russia, which has been going on since technically February of 2022.
That's what I
2014 if you read it online.
Right.
back about 400 years if you actually know the history over there, but that's something else.
And then the other one is over in the Middle East, primarily with Israel, Iran, the U.S., Yemen, a little bit of Lebanon, the Gazans, all kinds of players in the game. Some are more active than others. Some have some similarities and some differences. The main commonality is that we're sticking our nose in, in different ways. Some more directly, like in the Israeli conflict, because we just bombed Yemen less than a week or so ago. And that isn't the first strike. Under the guise that they're shooting missiles at ships over in the shipping lanes over there.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do have the side effects of this. There's signal gate that's been going on for about a week or so. That's another side story. But, Ukraine and Russia has been kind of quiet. Lots of talk of negotiations.
Well, quiet on the media side. I have family in Ukraine, and they're getting hit every day. Family in Kyiv, family in other parts out there, and I've been on the phone with the family there while they're watching drones go over, and you can hear explosions in the background, but you don't hear anything on the media. Oh, there's peace talks going on and things are quiet. No, they're not. On both sides.
But they can tell you what they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about the mainstream media is the information that we're getting about any conflict anywhere. Mm-hmm. You have to take into account the filters that it's coming through. What narrative they want to portray. That's where the independent journalists are doing so well in terms of, that's why the mainstream hates the independent journalists now, because we get into places, we get information that they don't want to be let out. But guess what? You can't stop the wave. Is great line from the Firefly movie, Serenity. You can't stop the wave. Once you get that signal out there, it spreads.
Yeah,
and it's getting worse there, not better. And for all intents and purposes, when you have the rest of the EU right now telling their people to prepare food, water, supplies, bunkers, when you've got the Slavic countries, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, mining their borders now, spending awesome amounts of money and manpower and resources. They don't do that just because they think there maybe could be at some point in time something's going to happen. They're doing that because they know he's coming in, and it's going to get nasty. It's already nasty for the people of Ukraine, but it's about to go kinetic. I think they're going to hit the Slavic areas next. They're about to send in 150,000 troops into Belarus from Russia for training exercises. Just like the training exercises right before the start of this current war in 2022, or the training exercises in 2014, right before going into Crimea, or, it's the Canadian prepper who, I watch and I post about, quite often. I don't agree with him on everything. We butt heads on some things. But he does say that one line that is very true. There are no military exercises, only World War III disguises.
Yeah.
And like I said, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but I give him. I mean, that's a very apt, true statement.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges with Ukraine and Russia in particular, you have two narratives coming from the same mouth, i.e., the West.
Yeah.
Okay. One is Russia is trying to reassert itself in a Soviet Union style. Okay. But then the other side of the mouth, they can't even beat the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
If we only supported them more, we'd be able to push them back. So to me, when I try to analyze it as an outsider, in traditional World War II style warfare, there'll be like a blitzkrieg basically going through the entire Ukraine and then into other countries, similar to what Germany did going the opposite direction.
Right.
But that's not how Russia is fighting this war. And so to me, it's like either they're the threat or they're not. So they're not it's like they're a threat to scare people, but not enough for the Europeans to scale up and arm until now.
Right.
Okay.
Now,
but it's like Russia is like eating along the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if they've struggled to do this, then there's no way. I've seen no evidence. I don't want to say no way. I've seen no evidence to state that the Russians will be able to plow through Ukraine and then go into the Baltics and beyond. Now, maybe they'll just maintain the line where it is kind of now, maybe creep a little bit more forward, and then swoop around by Belarus to go into Transnistria or that little area that is where they have all the armaments. What's it called?
Right. To try to bridge the I forgot the name of it. Begins with an S. The gap. The
Sloki Gap.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, it's a couple of things. One, yes, Russia by itself right now is not strong enough to take on all of NATO. No, they are not. Granted, they haven't used any nukes, and I don't mean the big strategics. Most likely, what's going to get used first in any conflict are going to be the smaller battlefield tactical nukes. Small, right? Still. But they see it in my eyes how NATO has Article 5, where if you attack one NATO country, the others defend because attack on one is attack on all. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea have a similar defensive pact going on because China by themselves can't take on the West. Russia by themselves cannot take on the West. Iran by themselves cannot take on the West. North Korea, The four of those combined, on the other hand, and if you look at those are the pacts that they're making, personally, I believe they are, like you say, nibbling at the edges, biding their time, because at some point in the not distant future, there is going to be a push on those four fronts about, almost simultaneously, not exactly the same time maybe, but, within days of each other.
Yeah. And
at that point, the West is not going to be able to deal with all the things going on at the same time. Historically, America's been able to, our wartime footing, our plan was to be able to handle two main fronts and maybe a small skirmish third somewhere. With the way that our military has been gutted over the last, at least 8 years, if not, further back, we're lucky if we can handle one full-scale front. Actually, because we haven't fought anything big since World War II. Everything has been police actions or small, things here and there. So if all of a sudden you've got four major fronts opening up, the West is going to be, where do we go? What do we do? Yeah. And that's not even considering if any of those fronts do utilize, even smaller tactical nukes, not even the big strategic ones, but the smaller ones. And the other thing that ties into all that is the fact that they don't even really have to fire a shot when it comes to us here in the USA. Remember World War II. The shipping lanes were shut down because the Germans were taking out all the merchant vessels.
Yep.
Well, we didn't depend on foreign trade that much back during World War II. Now, pharmaceuticals alone, we get 70-80% of our pharmaceuticals from China. Yeah. If the shipping lanes get shut down because of major conflicts, how soon do you think it'll be until your local Walmart or CVS or whatever is empty because stuff's just not coming in? And any ships that do start coming are getting attacked. So I see it as they have the Chinese especially, they don't think short term. They have their 100-year plan. They think long term. They are going to do something to weaken the West in general, not just the USA, the West in general, be it cyber attacks or terrorist attacks, whatever, just to cause us to go into some kind of chaos. And then open up all four of those fronts, shutting down the shipping lanes. They don't have to fire a shot at us. What's going to happen when, even if it's not a full grid down, let's say 50% of our grid is damaged, 50% of our financial and our communications is damaged. Now we got terror cells because, all the Chinese and Iranians that have been sneaking over, they start popping off here and there doing things. And then that's when all four of them say, okay, now that they're freaking out dealing with all that, Russia moves in to do their thing with NATO, China hits Taiwan, North Korea hits South Korea, and Iran hits Israel. And the West is going to be like, which way do we go? So I agree with you. Russia by themselves right now can't really do that much. So what's been going on right now is tit for tat. Putin wanting to get a hard on to try to do things and make himself look big. And, don't get me wrong, Ukraine is not blameless either.
Right.
They're corrupt, just like Russia, just like France, just like Germany. Every country is corrupt in some point. Governments are that way. It's us, you, me, the people. We are the good people. Even in those countries, the people in those, most of the Chinese people are good people. It's not the people, it's the governments that are corrupt. So when you look at the media, you look at the news, you look at what they're trying to say on either side.
Well, I think it's too fantastical for the average person to even comprehend.
Yeah.
And
normalcy bias. It's not going to happen to us.
And our lens is soldered in a sense to the past. So I think everyone expects to be massive invasions, Soviet Union style,
right?
And then that can't happen. So to me, out of those four fronts, I think obviously we couldn't defend them all, but I think we would sit there. Taiwan goes. I don't think we'll do very much there. And I think out of the North Koreans would invade South Korea. I think that would be kinetic. Okay. The Chinese will do soft power, embargo, and be patient when it comes to Taiwan and the South Pacific. I think they'd want to make a long-term play on Japan and
Japan,
New Zealand and Australia. So that'd be a different kind of battle. They're all going to be different in my eyes. And I think Russia will do like a hybrid of a kinetic and a soft power with the Europeans because they're so dependent on fossil fuels. So if they can't right now, if it wasn't for us for our liquid propane, natural gas, they'd have no energy whatsoever.
Well,
because they were so
fault for going green and shutting down all of their plants and everything else, thinking I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, is it good to try to go renewable? Yeah, I mean, here at our compound, we have solar and Tesla batteries and, everything too. But the reality is, on a small scale for like a compound or even a village, that stuff might work. But when you're dealing with cities of hundreds of thousands of people, the technology is not there. You don't have the storage capacity. So you need the fossil fuel still. And they've cut their own throat, a lot of countries wanting to go green. And, let's shut down all these propane and natural gas plants and coal plants and this and that and the other. Let's go completely green. And then they find when the sun's not shining, they don't have power. And when the wind stops blowing, they don't have power. And now what do we do?
Yeah. I think the only place for potential nuclear action will be in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And because the only countries that have nuclear weapons, okay, Israel secretly has nuclear weapons. It's like everyone knows but won't admit. Okay. And then there's NATO nukes sitting in Turkey.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me the U.S. has not pulled those out of there because the Turks are on an agenda to empire build over there. And we're not really doing anything about it. So if a nuke goes off, it's going to be in the Middle East because there's no other nuclear powers per se other than U.S. and Israel that has them. We'll go bomb the crap out of any country that doesn't have a nuke, but we don't do it to any ones that have them.
Yeah, that's why we haven't done anything to Russia or, some of the others. The new, what is it called again? I just saw it here. The Oreshnik like missiles that like Russia has been that they use at one time in Ukraine without any warheads, just to basically show them, hey, if we want to, we can. Hypersonic, intermediate range, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
They dropped them there without any warheads, just to basically say, if we wanted to, those could have been warheads. Yeah. And with the new hypersonic stuff coming out now, I mean, we're testing our own hypersonic stuff and everything. It's the arms race all over again, like back in the 60s and early 70s. But the way stuff is going now, I mean, it really won't take much for just something just to get through. And how like Russia was talking about the Poseidon, the 50 or 100 like megaton thing off the coast, a drone that it's going to hug the sea floor and then sit and wait. And we never know it until we see the out there in the wave.
Well, a thing that's curious to me, and Brendan, you could probably touch on this because you're a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to biblical knowledge than myself. Yeah. I think it's in Revelations where Russia and Turkey invade Israel.
Ezekiel 38, 39.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So
it's 9 nations. 9 nations attack Israel. And
God, Persia.
Over like that.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think we're seeing a nuclear exchange with China or Russia. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the Middle East. Like you were saying, the reason for it is we've been getting really lawyeristic as far as like the world goes. So it's like, oh, I'm not fighting you, Russia, but let me give guns and money to the guys who are fighting you. And
proxy wars.
Technology has advanced so far that we can, like you were saying, with the hypersonics and the technology we have now, we can do just as much damage as a tactical nuke or a conventional nuke for that matter. But because it's not nuclear, it's we don't cross that line. And so I feel they're just fine using conventional bombs, large scale, even to the amount of devastation of what a nuke actually would cause.
Just without radiation.
Right. As long as they don't use a nuke, we didn't cross that red line. So I don't think we're going to see that. The only place I would see that would be the Middle East, because that whole area for hundreds of years, their thing was terror. And so crossing that red line just for the shock value of it is definitely on the table for someone like Iran, some of the different non-state actors out there, the Houthis, Hamas.
No, if we're going to go with the Bible, with Ezekiel 38:39, for one, I mean, you are completely right. That's when God, basically Russia and Persia, which is Iran, and then Turkey and Syria, they all try to attack Israel. But then all of a sudden Israel does something, or God does something that wipes out 80% of the enemy like that. Now, what could do that? Either a nuke that Israel fires, or could be a friendly fire incident. Someone like Iran screws up with one of their nukes, whatever. But the point is that that's what causes the world to go, oh crap, Israel is protected. And that's what ushers in the 7-year peace treaty at that point, because everyone's like, yeah, let's peace with Israel, because if not, look at what just happened to, so on and so forth. And that's what ushers in then the tribulation. But that's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother story. Dominic, it was kind of like, well, if you want to, I know, like Brendan's up on the end time stuff, but I mean that I study that too quite often. So
I brought that up because I always try to look at things through a different lens.
Yes.
Okay. Than what we're being fed on the mainstream media, and as things align, okay. It doesn't mean that is what's happening now, but the people in power can utilize that to drive narratives to get people to believe. People, especially in the West, if they feel like they may, because I think by and large in the U.S., we don't want nothing to do with war. We may placate a lot of the shenanigans that are going on, but we don't really want war. Okay, so if you want to sell a war, a conflict, to a large amount of basically the Trump supporting base, then you throw some of that narrative in there, because they're very supportive of Israel. Okay, in large part because the Hebrews are a big part of the Bible. Christians were derived from the Hebrews.
Yeah. Okay? I mean, if it wasn't for Judaism, there would be no Christianity. That's what it's called, Judeo-Christian values. I mean,
So you need, if you want to make things happen in a conflict out there, you need a new crusade.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff, unfortunately, is you no longer need public approval to go to war.
True.
One of the things that I like pointing out with people, how many armed conflicts is America involved in right now?
Yeah, but they're not wars.
Exactly. So right now, the last time I checked, which it's been a couple months, but I don't think we've added any. Well, maybe now with Yemen, but I don't think we've gotten rid of any. But it's like 7 that we're involved between West Africa, different parts of the Middle East, Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. We're in like 7 armed conflicts. The vast majority of the citizenry just doesn't know that because it's not plastered everywhere. Yeah. There's that now famous video of Kamala Harris after we pulled out of Afghanistan. We're not in any armed conflict, and they zoom out and it's 4 Marines. Like, where the fuck are we then? But just most people just don't even know.
Yeah, I have friends that are currently serving, and some of them are in the military, some are former military, so they're acting as contractors now, whatever you want to call contractors. And they go off for 2, 3, 4 months at a time, and to places like Syria and this, that, and the other. And they come back and they tell me everything that's going on there, but you don't hear shit about it in the news.
No.
But guess what? We got people, even in Ukraine. I've had some of people who I know out there doing interesting things, interesting jobs. Let's put it that way, And being on the privy side of it here, knowing what's going on. When it first started, some of our guys were over there helping evacuate people out. And it's not that a lot of us are ready. Or anything like that. But yeah, we see what's going on, and we know what's going on. Those of us in the prepper community, the patriot community, because we get the real news of what's going on in these various conflict areas, stuff that you are not hearing in the news, and most of the normies out there have no earthly idea what's going on.
Yeah. The layers upon layers of our footprint, from official military to contractors to CIA operations, joint task force, et cetera, et cetera. All that unaudible money is going somewhere. Contrary to we might think it's all being laundered and going in politicians' pockets. A lot of that money is going to a lot of the footprint that we don't talk about or we don't see on the news. And look, if it wasn't for Telegram showing all those DIY, home videos, we would see nothing of Ukraine.
Right.
That's true. And, I don't really dig in. I have friends that do dig into Telegram for that content. I try to keep Telegram at an arm's length. Okay. And some guys dig really deep into it to find content, but you can get caught up in an echo chamber with that stuff too, because it's nothing to throw up a channel and get all kinds of people and just recycle similar videos or the same videos. But really all they are is a drone chasing a Russian vehicle or a trooper trying to drop a grenade, or you see some guys trying to do some half-ass, cutting a corner in a trench kind of thing. We can see that there's no training.
Right. Now, what people don't understand, like in Kyiv, which is, big city, it's the capital there, used to be over 4 million people. Now it's down to 2 million because so many people fled. What's going on right now, they're life-wise. For instance, power, electric, sporadic, 4 hours a day, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Same thing with water. People still trying to go to work and everything, but the drones every day. And you hear about the stuff going on in eastern Ukraine, where some of those towns and cities are gone, completely leveled. One of my family members out there, he was drafted, conscripted, pulled off the street, whatever you want to call it, and he didn't make it. There was a closed casket. It was bad, but it's real over there, and people here are so stuck in the normalcy bias of, it's never going to happen to me. It's never going to happen here. They don't understand how quick things can change, and on my show, I use the example all the time of COVID. Whatever you think about it, if you told people November, December of 2019 that in just a couple months the country's going to be locked down and there's going to be, people out of school and there's going to be shortages of food, people would have looked at you like, you're nuts. What movie script are you writing? But boom, it happened.
I was guilty of that. Me and Dominic were out on a hike one day. And so when COVID happened, I locked my gates. We didn't know, it was early. No one knew what was going on. I straight up locked my gates. And it's like, what was it, 6-8 months later, I'm on a hike with Dominic and he's talking about rationing meat. And I made the comment of, I don't think that'll happen here. And he's like, oh, no, it's been going on for months, dude. Where have you been? It's like, my backyard is where my meat is. So
exactly, bro. I mean, that's why I also tell people if you can, try to become less dependent of the system. Now, I mean, if you live in the city because of work or whatever, you're very limited in what you can do. But if you live more suburban or even better, rural, you can grow a lot of your own food and raise some of your own animals, chickens, rabbits. Even in suburbia, I have friends in suburbia that raise meat rabbits in their garage and have chickens in their backyard in suburbia, Then you come out rural, like, we are more, we've got pigs, chickens, horses, goats, whatever, So something like COVID happens or, any of that kind of stuff, a lot of us just lock the gate and we're like, we're fine. I don't know about you guys, but my wife was talking about when the Soviet Union fell. They went to sleep. Everything was normal. The next day there's tanks in the streets and no one had jobs and the food was gone. It happens that quick and people don't understand it. They're so stuck in their, again, normalcy bias that like nothing can happen, like nothing's going to change. It's always going to be like this. And it happens so quick. And, I try to open people's eyes to that, don't be paranoid. Don't be sitting in the corner with a can of Spam, freaking out, rocking back and forth, but just be prepared. Keep your eyes open. Understand what's going on around the world, because it does matter what happens in China or Russia or Iran. Because it won't take much. Those shipping lanes go down. They don't have to invade us. They don't have to fire a shot on us.
Yeah, COVID gave us a small taste.
Small taste, yes.
Small taste. Put the all the COVID side of it, but it's just the supply chain breakdown. That in itself, that gave us a taste of it.
Yeah,
and. I try to use things like that experience and, the experience we had just this past year with the hurricanes as vehicles to encourage people to prepare in some way. So if it means, hey, just prepare for a hurricane. I mean, that in itself, it's great.
Yeah.
Even if you had 3 months of food, some kind of combination. 2 weeks, to me, it's like you get to a certain extent. I think if you can get to 2 weeks, then it's easier to get to 6 weeks and then get to 3 months.
One of the things I'd tell people, if you look at your basic hurricane, 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks of food and water in your house. Modern nukes don't have the fallout problem as the nukes of the 50s.
Right.
The half-life period is about 2 weeks. The super sketchy, dangerous spot is the first 72 hours, but then 2 weeks out from there. If you've got a month worth of food and water in your house, you're set from everything from a hurricane to a nuke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, obviously, that's a really gross overlook of it, but it's better than most people,
Right. Well, and you've got to be sustainable after the fact. Like I say, even if you have a year's worth of food,
yes.
Once the food is gone, and if it's that big of a disaster, the stores aren't going to have food. There's not going to be stores. So how do you resupply? So that's why you have to be sustainable.
So when me and my wife shut the gates for COVID, it was okay, let's see how long we can last. We made it from shutting the gates, only eating out of our garden, only eating our animals. We butchered our last cow. I think it lasted us 21 months. 21 months or 24 months. No, it wasn't 24. I think it was 21 months. And it was okay, cool. We have a baseline, but we now have no animals and a pick-through garden. So then we started instituting rice and beans and doing the long-term storage, and we've built our animals back up since then. But it was it was that, okay, this will work. It can be done. But like you said, we have to have a sustainment plan after that. We didn't have a breeding program at the time. We had never raised other animals, you know. My wife just hatched a bunch of chickens the other day. She didn't tell me she had chickens in the incubator, so I'm running around the house wondering what the hell that clicking is.
Well, see, and that's why how we all talk about community or tribe being so important, because you know, you have what you have in terms of your gardens and your animals, and then someone else in your tribe, in your group, your mag, like whatever, they have their stuff. So that's when you build and you feed off of each other. You know, they may have more of the knowledge of the breeding. You have more of the knowledge of the growing of certain types of vegetables. So that's why it's so important as preppers to build that community before the shit hits the fan, because once the shit hits the fan, who do you trust? We've all watched The Walking Dead, you know that new person that comes in is most likely going to try to kill you, even though they're like, oh, I'm just a happy little girl, So you've got to build that trust, build those communities beforehand, so that when it does happen, you fall back to, okay, I raise rabbits. They do this, they do that. And we share, we work together, and we can stay sustainable up to a point, you know.
One of the things TJ likes to say is, if I don't like you on Tuesday, I probably won't like you on Doomsday. Yeah. And there's a guy up the road from me, retired gentleman, and all he does is plant fruit trees and sell them. And he lives right on, a lake around here. So that was the joke, that I've gotten some peach trees from him and some lemon trees. He sells macadamia trees as well. And I told him, I was like, I'm just going to keep you stocked full of beef. You just keep me stocked full of fish, macadamias, and lemons and peaches. Yeah. He was like, if it ever happens, you got a deal.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of our family, basically. The prepper family is, if there's no money, okay, we barter, we trade. Yeah. Skills, supplies, knowledge, but that's the way humans were meant to be in the first place. Yeah. Everything that we see now in the modern world is really antithetical to what we are supposed to be, and I grew up in the suburbs in Miami, but I always knew it was wrong. It didn't feel right. And the more and more that I've gone rural and prepping and country, it's like, yeah, this is where we belong. This is how we're supposed to live. Not that sterile city, you go into the store and buy stuff that you can't even read half the ingredients on there, and no, it's food. It's supposed to have ingredients, carrot. Yeah. That's what it is. Meat.
Well, you and Brendan, are part of, like, the way you guys have properties, and you guys have things going on your property and stuff. And that's an aspiration for a lot of guys in the community and gals. But for the vast majority, they don't do it for whatever their reasonings. And which is kind of a driver for the way I do things, because I live in suburbia and you live with all these different restrictions and stuff. So I do what I can do, but I also sit there, part of with me connecting with other people is understanding how to interact with people and to organize them, okay, in a positive, benevolent way. Because in a crisis, so say it's a short-term thing like the hurricane, then you get your neighbors, everyone helps each other. Everyone probably has a little bit of food and water in their house, and everyone has a case of water here or there and stuff like that. And if some people have some extra and everyone's just down for like a week, 2 weeks tops, you can muddle through with most people not going crazy and in feeding on each other if you sit there and get ahead of the game and organize the people, give them some hope, give them some structure and what have you. You get beyond that 2 weeks, or once the people lose hope, then they're either going to leave or they're going to pillage, and the ones that leave, then, you just go in with the people that stay, take control of the situation and, bring those supplies in and help people out and stuff. It may sound a little communistic, okay? But if you've watched the show The Walking Dead, which I know all of you guys have. Well, Brendan, have you watched The Walking Dead?
I watched the first 2 seasons when it first came out and then quit watching it.
Okay. Well, in The Walking Dead, from season probably 3, The Governor was season 3, I think. Yeah, because the second season was the farm and they were in the city the first season. So you see a series of guys that have led different communities. The governor, they called him, and basically they lived in a very help each other out community. He was the leader. They tried to have a Mayberry peaceful vibe to it. He just kept his sinister behind the scenes. Later in the series, you had Negan, who wore, he kept things organized, but he wore it on his sleeve through, his back with barbed wire. Lucille.
Yeah, Lucille, okay?
Yeah. And he reached out and created a vast group of communities and then forced payment on the other people. So I'm not advocating that, but that's how communism goes, huh?
If you look throughout history, though, I mean, honestly, that is human nature, unfortunately. Just go back thousands of years. When you have the feudal people that will usually fall under some controlling power simply because they either don't want to fight, they can't fight, or they see it as, hey, this guy may be an asshole, but he's protecting us from those worst assholes, kind of thing. As long as we give him 25% of our food, you know what I mean? He protects us. Is it right? No. But it's human nature. It's history. If you just look through all the dynasties and everything, that's how, and even to modern day, our government, really, we're paying them with our taxes and whatnot for protection. It's really the same thing, just on a much, much larger scale. And they try to dress it up under the guise of it's civilization, Yeah.
Well, I look at a couple scenarios, okay? So we get a guy like, just use Brendan, not that he would do this, but give an example. Yeah. He got his property, raise animals, grow some food and stuff like that. Now he could be presented with a choice, okay? Hey, I can partner with this other property or this other group, okay? And in exchange, we do this. He can see the value in that.
Right.
Because he doesn't have the manpower to control all. I'm not saying that he does, so the marauders don't go to Brendan's property. Okay.
Work well for him.
But if Brendan didn't have enough people to work the property and protect the property, okay, then it might behoove him to partner with the right people, not people scheming or what have you. Now, another scenario would be, say, in my scenario, I live in a suburban area. It could be in my interest to go out and organize the people, and because there's a lot of backyard chickens.
Yeah.
Some people got rabbits and stuff like that. It would be smart for me to sit there, organize the people, and put it in their head, hey, the Jones left and they abandoned their 6 chickens. Don't eat the chickens. Okay? Let's take care of the chickens. Let's bring them in. They can produce some eggs. When they stop laying eggs, then we can butcher them. Maybe we get a rooster somewhere, and then maybe we can breed some chickens here to expand the flock. I mean, rabbits, if you end up having some meat rabbits, it would be good.
They breed like rabbits.
Yeah. I mean, they have like, what, 6-8 litters?
Crazy amounts,
yeah. So, but if someone doesn't step in and show them, hey, it's smarter, let's be patient, let's share some of this other food so we can grow this and we can all have rabbits.
And like you were saying, there is that safety aspect too, the protection aspect. That's why I'm a very large advocate and proponent of any prepper group. Of course, they need to know how to raise animals, grow plants, purify water, do all the homesteading stuff. But they also need to know how to defend themselves in an organized manner. Yeah. I mean, having a few guys that can hunt and have some hunting rifles is great. It's better than nothing. But if you have an organized group coming and attacking your small group of 10 people, you got a couple of shotguns and a couple of hunting rifles. Yeah. In the long run, you're done. They're going to eventually wear you down and take your stuff, So I've been doing this for over 30 years, and back in the day, I would see, homesteaders and stuff that were just like that. They were great at all that. They had a couple of guns for hunting and so on and so forth, but they had no plan if an organized group was to attack them. Then I had my friends that were in the patriot groups, militia groups, whatever you want to call them, and they had all the tactical stuff down. These are former law enforcement, combat vets, door kickers, but they couldn't grow a potato between them to save their lives. Mm-hmm. So I saw back then, bring those groups together, so you have a tribe now where you have the doctors, the growers, the defenders, all in one group together. So you can sustainably survive, not just having the medical, not just having the food and all that stuff, but also having the security. Because, again, you can be super prepper, but if you're a family of 4, even if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you've got to sleep sometime. I mean, It doesn't have to be a huge group. It could be 20 or 30 gangbangers. There's 4 of you. You've got to sleep sometime. Eventually they're going to wear you down and take you out. So you have to look at it in a much larger scale of community, but you have to bring that security aspect. And I know not everyone loves guns and, which I totally understand. But unfortunately, there are bad people out there. And if the shit hits the fan in a big way, like we all think it could, look at The Walking Dead or any other film or book on that thing. There's going to be bad people that are going to do bad things, and they're going to look specifically for people with supplies that they can take from because they aren't armed, they don't have training, they don't know how to defend. And just look throughout history. I mean, it's happened again and again and again. But people have that normalcy bias. That'll never happen here. That'll never happen to me.
And those are the people they're acting like that. They're going to be part of that desperate mob that the guys that are doing the organizing, but for malevolent reasons, they're just going to use them as bullet catchers,
Yeah, even good men will do evil and horrible, terrible things. in the right circumstances. You know, your child is starving. You've never hurt a fly your entire life. You're going to do some terrible things to get food for your child.
Yeah. Brendan, what's your insight on this, man?
In agreement with everything you're saying. So I forget who said it, but huh?
I was making a joke. We're in an echo chamber.
You're right. I forget who said it, but somebody come to the conclusion a while back. It was a man can miss 9 meals before he will do just horrific things to another human being.
Yeah.
It's where you typically get like the 3 days without food or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Or water. Yeah. The rule of threes. Canterbury?
Yeah.
Canterbury?
I don't know. That being said, I do 3-day fasts kind of regularly. Doesn't make me angry, but again, they're on purpose, and I know there's food in the fridge. So if I didn't have food in the fridge, I might act a little different.
It's good to fast, though. Like for your body, it is.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's a good point because it's been drilled in our head through all the content we've consumed about the 3 meals. Most civilizations don't eat 3 meals a day.
No,
correct.
Okay, you're lucky if they get 2. Okay,
so if you look at like the Comanche, right? Oh, sorry, I was lagging. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
So like with the Comanche, if you read any of the stuff on, when like the first whites come in and observed them, they would go on these buffalo hunts, slaughter 20, 30 buffalo, and then it was literally gorge themselves for 3 or 4 days until the meat started to rot, and then it's smoke everything we can, and then that is our reserve. Then it's just don't eat anything but berries or whatever we can pick up along the trail. They'd go fasting for 3 to 3, 5, 7 days, not a problem. Eat a little bit of dried meat if they had it. Of course, they'd prefer the fresh meat, but it was literal feast and famine on a regular basis. We saw, you could see that all over the world. So
I think, I think I would guess here that part of what helped them do that is that they were in such great shape because of the lifestyle that they lived.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of that comes from most successful tribal peoples had a staple grain. In Asia, it was rice. In Central and South America, it was corn. The Israelites had wheat, things of that nature. The Comanche, the Apache, those like central United States nomadic tribes, they didn't have a staple grain. They just chased buffalo. So now the buffalo was their staple meat, but so they adopted that, just chase it down, buffalo, elk, whatever they could get.
Carnivore.
Yeah.
Carnivore diet.
I've lost 60 pounds on carnivore.
I'm starting here in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah. It can be effective. So the thing I was trying to get at is that since we already eat too many meals, okay?
Right.
Like when we get sick and we don't want to eat, we got a cold for 3-4 days. We're not even hungry. Right? So it's not like we can't survive 3 or 4 days without having a meal. We got to stay hydrated. Okay. So physically we're not desiring the food and everything. And I know whenever I get a cold and I don't eat for a couple of days, whatever, maybe some soup at most, my belt thins out, but I don't turn to skin and bones because I have too much stored fat on my body. Okay.
So I do 3-day fasts regularly. The first 24 hours is the worst.
Yeah.
And after that, I do not think of food again until about the hour before I break the fast. And I think that's a mental thing because I'm counting the clock at that point.
Yeah.
And I've measured my weight before and after just to see, like, realistically, am I losing anything? It's negligible, if anything. It's water weight. You might lose a pound or two,
Right.
but that's just the water weight you've let loose. You're not going to even start eating on your fat reserves until well after 72 hours. You know?
Right.
So we're fine.
Yeah. And so even if we were, and then sometimes, because I think you're right when it's come to the mental thing, because I think after X amount of time, we just stop thinking about it. Okay. And if we're busy doing other stuff, okay, that distract us. I mean, because guys in the military, you know, they might get their MREs and stuff, but there's times they're deployed, they might not get more than a meal, or if they're on mission and things go awry or whatever. So we can survive. Okay. So the people, the normies, it's going to be a mental thing for them because they're going to have that physical thing and they can't handle it mentally. And then they're going to do stupid things.
Well, and not just food, but how about the people that are addicted to freaking like cigarettes, you know, like nicotine, you know, caffeine, so on and so forth. You know, I mean, the first few weeks to a couple of months, you're going to see people going insane, and not to mention the like drug addicts, let's say, the people that end up going through like withdrawals, or how many people in this country are on, prescribed stuff for, like Prozac and things like that, it's keeping them normal. And then all of a sudden they have to go cold turkey and now they're going schizo. Yeah. I mean, those first few months are going to be crazy.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to estimate because, all the medicines that we take stay in our system, for a certain amount of time, but less and less. But it's like, how do you calculate? So if someone's on Prozac, just for an example.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever the milligrams is, I don't know what the doses are and stuff, but they might be halfway through their monthly prescription because I'm sure they don't give that stuff out in 90-day increments, those kind of drugs. But if they sit there and they got 15 days left, if they don't ration it, they're good for 2 weeks. But then how long after they hit zero does it get out of their system where it impacts them? Or if they start rationing it, if there's, they're cognitive enough, they start going every other day. But, once you take your last dose, what's the breakdown, I wonder?
About 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not too long.
I have a family member who you can tell because it's a weird like switch, right? And when they're taking it regularly, they're fine. And then they'll skip a couple days and they'll go, "Oh, I'm fine without it. I'm all better." After 2 weeks, they snap. They go right back into the old behaviors, however it is, and then they start taking it again. Well, it takes a week to 10 days to get back into their system to balance the chemicals out. So they start taking it again, and they're like, "Well, I don't feel any better. I'm just going to stop taking it."
Yeah.
And now, I think that's because SSRIs and antidepressants and anti-anxieties are like messing with the chemical balances in our brain. That stuff's horrible, in my opinion, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, but the like point is when it runs out though, and not just one or two people, when you have however millions of people around the country are on it, and now you're going to have a bunch of psychotic, depressed, hungry, cold, afraid, put all those things together, and it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. And it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get because everything's going to hit at different times for these people,
Yeah.
Man.
That's why I try to keep, I do have my, drinky every here and there, but, I was a bartender for a while. So I have a very nicely stocked bar and other stuff stocked in there because you know what? after the poo hits the fan, there's going to be some need for downtime. It's going to be good for bartering and trading. Even if you don't smoke, buy cigars or cigarettes, vacuum seal them, throw them in the freezer, like whatever, because you get those people having nick fits, and you'll be like, hey, they'll do damn near anything. Look, I need this hole dug. I got this for you. Before you know it, they're like digging for you.
Yeah.
Like anything that you need. I mean, you've got to look at it that way too. I've often said it. If you have the money to like do it, make little like goodie bags, like Ziploc bags with like the small tube of toothpaste, like little toothbrush, dental floss, little toiletries, the hotel bar soap, like whatever. So you do get those people that come up to your gate that you're not going to let them in, but you want to at least be like, look, here's a gallon of water, here's a little toiletry thing, go on your way, kind of thing. Just that right there will turn people around, give them some semblance of like normalcy in this now newly chaotic world, and you do that nice for them. Now, granted, they could end up being, bad people in the long run, but there is a, very good chance so that those people that you help then, future time, you may need something. They remember, hey, they gave me that last little tube of toothpaste that I had 6 months ago, Yeah.
Well, have you guys seen the movie Homestead or the series?
Not yet. I've been wanting to, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I won't spoil it for you, but there is a portion of it, not in the movie, but because there's only 2 episodes. Okay. So what you do is you sign up for the platform that's doing it. It's like $12 a month. Just sign up for 1 month. You can watch the movie, watch the 2 episodes. There's some other good content on there. But if you like I like the binge shows and stuff like that. So that's what I did. But there was a part in one of the shows where a lady brings another lady in to one of these rooms with a bunch of bunks, and people are all like laying around, sleeping, and they weren't physically sick. They're all like depressed. So one of the things you don't really hear about from the influencers that we all consume content from is how do you deal with the depression and the mental health things of the people that are in your community? Because that's like a threat from within if you don't placate it right.
Yeah, they may not be on meds, but they still, in this new world, there's going to be people depressed. They've lost friends, family members, and they're in an unknown, uncomfortable environment, and that freaks a lot of people out naturally without having to be on anything. So yeah, that's where you start going into like the comfort food thing, or try to give them some sense of like normalcy, especially with children. Games, board games, cards, things like that, things to distract them like mentally. Also work helps a lot of the time too. You give them a job to do, even if it's something simple, like you teach them how to milk the goats, and that's what they do. It gives them a sense of purpose, because in these type of situations, people are going to be lacking purpose too. I had a job. I used to be a CPA. I used to be this. Now I have nothing. And they feel lost. They don't know where they're going, what to do. Give them a sense of purpose, and that helps. I mean, it's not a cure-all, but there are things that you can do that for a large portion of them, it will start to bring them back, because they start getting into a routine, the sense of purpose, the little bits of like memory of, playing board games and camaraderie. If you have power, if you're smart enough to have solar and batteries and everything like some people, music. old CD player, old music, like whatever, preferably good stuff from the 70s and 80s. Movies even, so that they can look at something and feel familiar to it. All those little things help trick the brain to kind of pull them out of the depression,
Yeah. Well, B, in your past employment, okay, you probably dealt with some of these symptoms we were talking about. I mean, what were some of the things that you guys used to do to help people evolve from where they were to something positive while they were
talking about like the rehab work and whatnot?
Yeah.
So there's a few different things. So in our case, we were heavily monitored. You had the clinical side and you had the medical side. I was on the clinical side, but I worked hand in hand with medical. So medical is always watching over people. We took vital signs 3-4 times a day, constantly checking in. The biggest threats were benzo withdrawals and alcohol withdrawals. That will kill you. Most other things, it'll suck really bad, but it won't kill you. Unless there's like some other underlying issue, the 20-year heroin addict who comes in, who's just got a bad heart. Yeah, he might pass in his sleep. But generally speaking, cold turkey alcohol and cold turkey benzos can kill you. They would do step down protocols for them. So either narrow it down via, if it's a benzo patient, they might give them Valium and then drop the milligram every couple of days. One of the weird things I thought it was weird, but it seemed to be standard practice for the alcohol patients, Benadryl. They would give them one Benadryl pill a night, and it just helped them knock out, go to sleep. But it helped them stay asleep. So I guess there's something with the alcohol withdrawal that starts messing with your brain chemistry. You can't get into REM sleep, and that's it. Just if you don't get REM sleep, your body just starts trashing itself, and that's where it like really starts messing with your immune system and things of that nature. So I thought that was very interesting. They did that for more than a couple of patients, where it was just something that simple would help the process. I'm not saying it's going to cure. If you're listening to this and you're an alcoholic and you think Benadryl's going to cure you of alcoholism, that's not what I'm saying. But it was something to help them at least not have to worry about the sleep aspect and further trash their bodies compared to anything else that they might have damaged already.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of minor stuff like that. So with the alcoholics, we saw a lot of seizures, knowing how to handle a seizure. In the moment, not a whole heck of a lot you can do, just try and hold their neck stiff and make sure they don't bash their head against something. And at that point, we always elevated to a higher level of care. So I didn't see, usually by the time the ambulance got there, they're already awake and cognizant. It's not a whole heck of a lot you could do, If no one's around and they fall and they crack their head, I don't know how long they've got, I guess it'd be a hit or a miss in a lot of situations.
So those are good points, because alcohol withdrawal is probably going to be one of the most common ones that we would deal with in any kind of an extended emergency situation. So once we get past that, the physical part, okay, I mean, how many days do you think it takes for someone to kind of process the withdrawal, the physical?
It depends entirely on the individual. I've seen some guys go in and have 3 absolute shitty days, and then day 4 they're a brand new man. And I've seen people ride it out to like day 20. It all depends on a myriad of factors. Even something as simple as how big the guy is. 140-pound dude is going to process that stuff out of his body way quicker than a 250-pound dude. Are you just drinking, or are there other substances? Are you taking prescription meds too? Are you smoking pot too? Some things metastasize in your liver. Some go through, process out through your kidneys. Some store in your fat cells, So there's just a bunch of different factors. If I had to guess, the vast majority of people, it was a week to 2 weeks, 7 to 14 days. That was probably the bulk of the bell curve. If you were clear after 3 days, that was surprisingly quick. And we did have more than a couple who were, 17, 18, 19 days out, but it was a thing. We saw it.
Yeah. Well, when you get a lot of guys that are either lone wolf dudes or they're tactical teams, and they don't ever talk about how they would deal with these situations. Either they sit there and just, I'm not going to tolerate it, or they just don't think it will happen. But families are a package deal, and there's going to be some people that you find of a value that you are playing with before the emergency, and they may have somebody you didn't even know about. And you need that person. You want them. You got to take the good and the bad and the ugly with their family. Then there might be people that just are in the moment that join up with you, normies, okay, that you find a value for because you need people, you need community, and they could have someone, some kind of relative or whoever that has a situation, and they may not even know about it or don't think it's that big of a deal until it is. So you get in that situation. Now you need bodies, okay, to handle that detox, because that person has to be watched, because the moment they have any kind of ability to have movement, they're looking for their fix. And first they'll look where they're at, okay, and break stuff, to get to it, or they'll break your security in the sense to get out, because we're all looking outward of people trying to get in and not watching people trying to get out, like in a prison, okay? And that can cause a security breach because they got out, so they might be able to sneak back in, or they get caught up out there, and I need a fix. Oh, hey, these people got stuff, or I can get you this thing, and then they bring them back and let them in. And now these are extreme examples, but we can't sit there and just act like, well, we're not going to have to deal with that, because we're going to have to. And then once you get beyond the physical, then you got the mental, because a lot of the times these people have drinking problems is because it's their coping mechanism to they're unhappy with whatever their life experience is at that moment. So now, like you were saying earlier, okay, that you got to give them structure. You got to give them hope. You got to give them something to feel good about themselves. That's kind of where I was looking for too with you, Brennan, is like once you got people through the detox, okay, was there things that you guys commonly did to give them some positive outlook on themselves? Because they might feel like crap and I'm a loser and my life is over because they're not drunk anymore.
So not so much on the rehab side, but on the outer bands of that, when you get into like 12-step programs. So I have a lot of experience with AA and NA, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. One of the beautiful things about those programs are they set your life up in a structure. They give you, okay, boom, 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 get a sponsor, follow these steps. Now you have a goal that you're looking toward. You have the structure of the steps, and then you have accountability with the sponsor. And so hopefully by the time you've completed those steps, you've either pushed far enough away from whatever your DOC is, your drug of choice, or whatever vice it may be, because the 12 steps are the same in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, all that. So And you can literally cookie cutter it for whatever vice you're trying to kick. But yeah, the big part is structure and accountability.
I agree.
Trying to get, and I think that goes with a lot of things. You know, there's a psychologist by the name of Sebastian Younger, and wrote a book quite a few years ago, and he was wondering why soldiers who return from war, all they want to do is go back to war. You know, this is supposedly some of the worst experiences they've ever had. They watched their friends get killed. They had to do horrific things. But as soon as they get home, all they want to do is go back. And so he embeds himself for a number of months with a squad out in, I can't remember if it was Iraq or Afghanistan. I believe it was Afghanistan. But he had come to the conclusion that, you know, human beings are built to be in tight-knit groups of people struggling for survival. We have that structure. We have that common goal. That's why NA and AA works. You're a tight-knit group. You have your home group. You're all struggling for survival, be it survival that you have had to manufacture on your own. I think that's why we see a huge rise in this, you know, wokeism with the younger population, is because we live in a beautiful society where we don't, like, none of us are at risk of starving to death today. You know, even homeless guys eat better than most of the world, you know? So they need a struggle for survival, and they need a group. So they manufacture it, be it politically based, ideology based, whatever. So they're manufacturing their struggle, and they're manufacturing their group. So you can see that all over, that just having that structure and that common goal. Something about the human biology, it works.
Well, if you again look throughout history, when, you know, going from the hunter gatherer, so that's exactly it. We were in like tight knit tribes, usually no more than 30 or 40 people, you know, and it was a struggle for life every day. That's why sometimes, I mean, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way, but in some ways, sometimes I think that the best thing that could happen to us is if the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
It will kind of like reset our clock to where we'll go back to where we're supposed to be. Because again, the city, the civilization is so anti what, like you said, we are programmed for. That's why you have all these problems. You know, if we were in our little tribal groups struggling for survival, that's when we are the happiest and we do the best. No matter how much it might suck, that's how we're wired, you know?
Yeah. So the Hadza people in Africa are a nomadic tribe. They're known as the happiest people on earth. And they have, like, I think it's a mortality rate of, dang, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but their average life expectancy is like 42, you know, because, you know, they're out literally hunting with spears. And David Chow, an artist, went out and lived with them for a couple of weeks, and he was talking to them, was like, man, you guys can come to America, you know, we'll do this, we'll do that. And their concept of America is, oh, that's the place where people build skyscrapers so they can throw themselves off of it. Why would we want to go there? You know, they don't even have a word for suicide. It's like, why would you want to not live in their mind?
They are truly alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So even though their age expectancy is 42, which was the standard just a couple hundred years ago, okay, that was considered old, but you know, that tribe is living a full life.
So that graveyard in Mississippi we were talking about earlier, you know, one of the things that caught me and another guy off guard as we're walking through it, all of the people from the 1800s, they're all like 36, 29, 41. You know, they were dropping young. Now, that being said, we're in southern Mississippi and it was a black community. So I'm sure late 1800s, they didn't have a whole lot of access to good healthcare, good food, things of that nature. I'm sure that was a lot of factors, but just in general, I saw more than a few people who were like early to mid 30s all throughout that graveyard.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, it's all about perspective. You know, when I was saying they were alive and they lived a full life, someone from the West would be like, what are you talking about? You know, they only lived to 42. They're hunting for their food. Yeah, but like Brendan said, they're the happiest tribe in Africa. You know, what good is it to live till you're 80 years old if you're miserable for half your life, if not more?
Yeah.
You know, your quality of life is garbage, you know, and just because they live in huts and don't wear shoes, or maybe they do wear shoes or whatever, as long as they feel fulfilled. I mean, they have families, they have children, they raise them, you know, they have multi-generational families, even though they die younger. The girls are probably getting pregnant at 14, 15, you know. So they're starting what they would normally do, what we would do in our lifestyle, much younger, but they're living fuller lives and stuff. You know, just because we have a very materialistic and modern society doesn't make it that it's better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that a big reason for so many of the vices, the alcoholism and drug abuse, is because people feel empty and they're trying to fill it with something. You know, whatever it is. It could be, they could be a workaholic. It could be like money, whatever it is, but they try to fill that empty void because they don't feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
You know, but then go ahead.
No, sorry. I was going to say, we see that, well, I see this a lot in the preparedness space. Okay. Like Brendan was rattling off different addictions. Okay. They tended to be for vices with stimulants, basically. But people can have it with food. I mean, we have a lot of hoarders in this space and to varying degrees. Okay. I mean, some people just put back gear and never use it. Okay. They put back food and never eat it or never rotate it. You're hoarding. People buy stuff because it's on sale, not because it's healthy for them or for and to put it away.
One more case of ammo. I swear, just one more case of ammo.
See, but see, you actually use some of it and rotate it.
Yeah, I train all the time, so yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'm doing like classes right now. Just did my D class. We're doing our G classes now, you know, and so yeah. I mean, we're constantly at the range. We go through ungodly amounts of ammo. But
yeah. And I think people just pick different things, you know. People that put stuff back, oh, it's a good barter item. Not saying that putting stuff back is not good, you know, for bartering and stuff, but just think, okay, of the people we've interacted in these spaces, okay, when they get excessive.
yeah,
They tend to do it for one or a small group of things versus a lot of different things. Because everyone has different means, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're just buying it to buy it, to have something to talk about. They spend so much time online. You know, some people, they just love the interaction and they want to help people, but then there's other people that are just douches. They're just looking to make fun of people and stuff, and it's like, dude,
they want to be tactical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, that is another variation of you got a mental health issue.
Yep.
Okay. Because it's not normal, okay, to be a dick to people all the time.
I've been called worse.
Oh. But so I mean, running back, we got to be careful of that because we look outward for all these threats, okay, to our success, okay, in an emergency when there's so many right there at home or in our
We can be
community.
our own worst enemy.
Yes, and then some people, they live in the fantasy of SHTF.
Yeah.
They can't wait for it to happen, And I think a lot of that stems from, one, they feel that they're restrained from doing things they want to do, okay? But not all, and I don't mean it in the sense that they're not allowed to say what they want to say. It's their behaviors. They want to just open carry and pull their gun on anybody because they feel like it or they got pissed off. They don't want to have any rules. So I think that's why they want that stuff to happen. So they feel like it can be the Wild Wild West. And they can do whatever I want. No one's going to tell me what to do and what have you. But it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's nothing like what they think it's going to be.
The reality of it is something scary.
I mean, guys that go and look, and just, like when I went in the Marine Corps, I wanted to be Rambo. Not exactly, but it's like I wanted to be that small weapons specialist. I wanted to be able to do stuff like Rambo did. Okay? Other than watching the movies and the shows, I had no idea what combat would be like. And thankfully, I was never having to be exposed to combat. Okay? But I've had friends that have. And I've had conversations with those people. Okay? And some of the things they have to live with. Okay? And not that they did bad things, but they were in situations where bad things occurred. Okay. And it's a split second. You got to make a decision, and based on not just fear of what could happen, it's based on what you've seen happen to the guy in the Humvee in front of you or behind you the day before or the week before. So, we got to give them some grace for that. But at least those guys have an idea of what it's like. But all these yahoos that are all talking about civil war and, all kinds of craziness, they have no idea for the most part.
Yeah, and that is very true. They think it's going to be like in the movies. That's going to be romantic, and they're going to be standing on the on the hilltop with the wind blowing in their hair and the girl at their leg. Kind of like Ash from the Evil Dead and all that. It's like, but no, that's not what it is. I mean, even if for a short time you do become that one despotic leader of some group and you for a short time do have that kind of power, guess what? The lifespan of those people, again, look throughout history, Hitler, Napoleon, Genghis Khan, so on and so forth. You may reach a pinnacle for a while, but when you're at the top, everyone's looking to take you down, even people from right inside, like your own organization. How many times in the courts of England did you have assassinations and poisonings and this, that, and the other, kings and queens and princes?
It was a cesspool 24/7. I mean, Game of Thrones, I mean, it's a great show. But it really, and I'm a history of student, and I know you are too, Lance and Brendan. It's just like Game of Thrones was really a reflection of what the Middle Ages were.
Yeah.
Okay. And my God, we just have a different variation of it now with our political system.
It's really the same thing. Yeah, really. Yeah. Instead of swords and dragons, it's, other types of weapons, and
it's Apache helicopters. Okay, and your master of whisperers is the CIA agents, NSA. Oh man, yeah. What do you think? What do you think, B?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's the fantasies. Yeah, you were talking earlier about. So you get some guys who focus super heavy on the tactical, but they can't grow a potato, and then the vice versa. It's what's the old Book of Five Rings? I want to be
Lord of the Rings.
Book of Five Rings.
Oh,
It's about I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
But you get situations where, so like I do tactical training and things like that. And someone who doesn't have any experience, everybody gets up on a stack against a wall. And next thing you know, you turn around, there's a guy pointing his rifle at the back of your head or at the back of your leg,
Mm-hmm.
Or, it's always hilarious to me to get up on a line and everybody starts shooting and they've never shot next to someone shooting, and the muzzle blast freaks them out and they immediately turn and point the gun at someone else, or they'll straight up drop their gun.
Oh.
That's always unsettling.
Yeah.
But in the vice versa, you get the guys who are cool with that and they're okay, come over here, let me show you how to make compost or show you how to plant. Oh, I don't want to do that. And I was like, okay, cool. You don't get to eat this week.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Everyone's going to have to like pitch in because you're not going to do security all the time. So like, let's say, you have got your guys that do the security rounds. Everyone, at least in the group that we're like set up, everyone at least a couple times a week is going to be on other duty rather than their primary.
Yep.
So everyone gets cross-trained in various things. Now, do I expect everyone to be a doctor? No. But I do expect everyone to at least know how to do CPR, stop the bleed, and some basic first aid. So they can assist the doctor if need be. I don't expect everyone to know how to help a cow give birth. But you've fed them, you know how to clean out their stalls, and you can milk them at least, and you can assist with other things because you've been around it. If you've never been around a full-size cow, some people get freaked out. It's a large animal, and but you work around them, even if it's once or twice a week. Let's say like normally you're in, you are one of the like babysitters, because there's going to be children in there. So you're part of the daycare. I want you once a week learning how to shoot. I want you once a week learning how to take care of the animals, doing this. So everyone gets at least comfortable and familiar. So you don't have that panic. It's like,
Yeah.
the cow licked me, it tried to eat me. No, cows don't eat meat. I'm sorry. You're fine. Now don't walk behind the cow because it could kick you and crush your skull. That is a thing,
And that's the thing that people don't realize. Like,
yeah.
This is 1,000-pound animal, and it doesn't realize it's 1,000-pound animal. My last bull, he would just lean into you, and if you were up against, the cattle gate or a tree or something like that,
Pop.
yeah, easily. One of the things that I would tell my children. So if you try and push on an animal, they will naturally push back every time.
Yep.
So you get 1,000-pound cow, it's a brick wall to you. You're not pushing that off of you. Simplest way to get 1,000-pound cow off of you is grab its ear and pull it toward you. Because if you pull the cow towards you, it immediately goes, oh, this thing thinks it can take me. Maybe it can. And then it runs the other way.
Okay.
It's always going to resist. If you push into him, he's going to push into you. If you pull into yourself, he's going to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's
bovine Aikido.
Yes.
And cow tipping is not a thing. Yeah, we've always joked about it, but no, you're not going to go out there and tip a cow.
It's an urban legend.
It's a drone redneck legend.
It's just a way for you to watch your buddy get kicked in the head is what it is.
Well, this is a good segue into talking about social media influencers. Okay, because we've had all these discussions tonight so far, and most of it was about community and different experiences and the deal. And you don't hear a lot of what we talked about tonight by the social media influencers. Now, Bear and PJ, they kind of ride in that grain. They emphasize being to do all the other things and be tactical when you need to be, train and stuff. But 90% of what they do is taking care of their properties, their animals, deploying to help other people and stuff. So I respect that. To me, it's like if I'm looking for like pillars or attributes of influencers that I kind of want to investigate and kind of see what they want to say, that's kind of the benchmark that I use. Okay. Because it's most in line with what I feel. Some of which I adopted from them because I've been following them for so long, and just some of it that it made sense to me. They didn't have to motivate or inspire me to think that way. It was just natural for me. It made sense. So I got to give them credit, where credit's due. But you see more to influencers today, either reviewing gear or talking about being tactical, or now in past couple years, even more so, it's just like feeding the echo chambers and the narratives. They've kind of like either drank the Kool-Aid, or for financial benefit, they're replicating the Kool-Aid, or some combination of both. So that's kind of where we're going to go next with our conversation here. Now, outside of Bear and TJ, are there any other influencers that you guys have, consumed content from in the past or present that kind of align with the way that you think, whether they motivate you to think that way or it just, hey, we're on the same page?
There was one back in the day. He's long gone now. It was health issues. I'm not even sure if he's alive anymore.
Main Prepper,
exactly. Yes.
That was the first guy that I ever followed.
Yeah. Because again, I've been doing this for 30 years, but the whole YouTube thing in this space hasn't been around, that long. So, but yeah, I think Main Prepper was probably one of the first ones that I kind of latched onto back in the day. And, when he started going downhill health-wise, that, was like, wow. Another one, and she's not really tactical. She does shoot some, so on and so forth, but Patriot Nurse. Yeah. She's been another one that I really liked what she, especially in her beginnings, I mean, again, with it seems to be a formula with almost any of the influencers, including myself. I mean, I've fallen into the same cliche where when you first start, you start doing purely prepping content, how to build a fire, how to do this, how to do that. And those are what you talk about, or the like videos that you make. But after a while, when you run down through that list of all those normal skills that, to try and teach people, it starts getting harder to find something new to do. Yeah, let's talk about nuclear war survival and radiation or whatever, But at a certain point, we, like most of us seem to have gone to, we start talking about what's going on in not just in the news, but around the world, the reasons why we need these skills. So then we kind of start, and I mean, they've just about all done it. Southern Prepper One, Canadian Prepper. I mean, everybody, where we kind of move from content videos of how to do and, stuff to, well, guess what? Russia just did this, and so just did this, and this volcano is going off, and this earthquake, Then we start becoming more like news oriented. So I personally try to say, okay, I know I'm doing it. I know why I'm doing it, because you can only tell people how to make fire so many times that no one's going to want to watch the same content again and again.
Yeah.
But I try to bring it full circle, like, okay, this is why we need to prep. These are the things you have to look for. This is what's really going on. So you stay situationally aware, not just micro, like what's going on around you right now, but also macro, because like we've said, what happens in Russia or in China or in England does affect us here. So if you see, like with COVID, like let's say, when it first was getting weird in China back in November of 2019, I remember seeing things about it, but you didn't hear anything here at all yet. But because of the influencers and people that I was watching, it was on my radar, like, oh, this might come here. Who knows? We don't know what it is, whatever. It was kind of on our radar. Then I went to North Carolina to see some friends of ours in February. And while up there, that's when it started. Oh, there was cases here. There was cases there. That was before people started buying up masks and everything. And I started telling people at that point, guys, you better start looking at this and, get ready. But that was because I was looking ahead. So at least me in how I try to do it, yes, I've fallen into the same trap. In order to have content now every week, I've been doing this show for 3 years. I can't talk about building fire every week for 3 years. So right. We've gone to the news, we've gone to that, but I try to keep it prep related, try to keep it, these are the reasons why. And of course I will every now and then, like if it is something like, guess what? North Korea just tested a nuke and now they are threatening to do X, Y, and Z. I may go into a rehash of something from 2 years ago. Okay, let's get back to the basics of NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, and then I'll go over all this stuff. So every so many shows, we will bring in some of because there's new people tuning in all the time. New preppers that don't know everything that we've taught for the last 3 years or 5 years or 10 years as some of these people. The only problem that I see are some of the influencers that are making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but they start to become sensationalists.
Yeah.
Strictly for making money. They will put that thumbnail, we're all gonna die, and then just to get people to click and look. And I mean, you do what you got to do, I guess. I mean, that's why with me, I don't make money at my podcast. I could. I've had some sponsors here and there, but I've never really gone looking for them. So I don't want to have the money to drive what I do. Yeah. If I make some money here and there, cool, fine, whatever. To me, I want to get information and knowledge out to people. And it's therapy for me too, in a way, actually, to stop the voices in my head. Start talking to the screen, like drown out what's going on up here.
Yeah, totally get that. All right, what about you, B?
The first one for me would be Dave Canterbury.
Okay. Yeah.
I watched him, when he was on Dual Survival with Cody Lundeen back in the day, and his whole thing's kind of like my historical niche frontiersman, early 1800s, late 1700s, things of that nature. I always had an interest in that historical perspective, so found him through researching that stuff. He used to do a series on the Long Hunters, and one of the things that I always found cool about him, the practicality aspects. Our buddy Nate used to always make fun of me. Is like, if he wants to find the simplest, cheapest way to do something, he asks me. Because everyone will give him this huge, long, esoteric, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, and then he'll call me, and I was like, oh no, just one thing. And so one of the things that like Canterbury used to do that I always found interesting. He'd reload his shotgun shells with black powder because you could buy a case of black powder or, a pound of black powder and a thing of like BB gun BBs for a fraction of the cost what you could buy shotgun shells for, shot per shot.
Right.
So like my truck gun, I have a bunch of buddies who carry truck guns, and it's like, oh, I carry this, 10-inch AR-15, or I carry, this AR and 9mm. My truck gun is a single barrel 20 gauge shotgun, and strapped to the side of it is 2 bird shot, 2 slugs, and a buckshot, because I'm in the woods all the time. And if a turkey comes in front of me, I don't want an AR-15 if I'm stuck in the woods. If I had enough, because there have been situations where I went in with enough food and water for 3 days because I planned to be there for 3 days. I get stuck for 9, but because I had a shotgun, I was able to eat,
Right.
AR probably wouldn't have been great in that situation. So I enjoyed Canterbury for the practicality of it. Didn't watch a whole lot of I like the informative guys. I'm not huge on the Canadian preppers and the sensationalists and things like that. Survival Dispatch back in the day was really, really good.
Gooch.
It's still good. It's kind of leaned into that, like you were saying, this let's sit back and pontificate what's going on in the world,
Yeah. I mean, Scooch used to be really good with like gear reviews and kits, EDC or Go Bag or whatever. But then it's like when it was just him, I really liked him. But then he joined Survival Dispatch with those other guys I really didn't know. And then it just seemed like a business at that point, I mean, and it ties into how many times you're going to talk about Go Bags at EDC.
Yeah, exactly. So at a certain point, you got to do something else, and that's why we tend to start to get into the news and stuff. I mean,
yeah. And then sorry.
Yeah.
We got the Urban Prep. I think it's the Urban Prepper. The guy out in was it Washington or Oregon or somewhere. Now he never did the news stuff. It was always like his little kits of things, very organized. It's not that I learned things from him because he was very meticulous about his stuff and explaining why he included it and what you could use it for. And he always went beyond like a Go Bag. The Go Bag is like the most common thing. And people eat that content up.
Yeah.
In EDC. I don't know if it's just like to see me comparing to what they got. It's like what's in your jock strap versus mine. I mean, that's what it kind of seems like, But he was very good at specializing his kits. Like if you want to sit there and make like a like a decon thing, shot. And he'd show you all the items. Go to Home Depot, you buy this painter's tape and painter's suit and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Then he had the PDFs in there. So he wasn't trying to sell you anything. He was just geeking out on it with you, and he had good stuff. Then he got sick a couple of times, had some health scare issues. Then he would do some, joint podcasts with other guys. Like, what's the guy that lives up in like South Dakota? He got like the white thing on his hair.
Magic Prepper.
Yeah. I liked him a lot in the beginning. But Magic Prepper, Black Scout Survival, all these guys I used to watch, I don't watch them anymore because now they just kind of get into the fear porn kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I get enough of that from Canadian Prepper.
Yeah.
But at least, he gives some real insight of stuff, of like what's happening in Ukraine, whatever. So I put up with his sensationalism and stuff like that because I get some content from that. And I used to watch Monkey Works because he used to track all the air traffic for military stuff. And then I stopped watching him because it didn't really,
New York Prepper, NY Prepper. He's good about the like tracking stuff too, and he's got contacts over in Poland himself too. So kind of like with me with like Ukraine, he gets a lot of actual firsthand intel, which is good, Yeah.
And so, Brendan, what do you think has been the best influencer for information on like current events that you followed?
Besides me.
Yeah.
I'll say with current events a whole heck of a lot. Pastor Joe at Viking Preparedness. That's probably the most of my current events. I don't really watch a whole heck of a lot of people.
I mean, even Bear talks current events, here and there.
He does. He does. I don't consume a whole heck of a lot of content. I am a very busy guy. So, but yeah, usually it's either people in my network getting a hold of me and keeping me updated. You being one of them, Tom, you let me know a lot of stuff, as well as a couple other of my guys who are either involved in certain things.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to say that without like opsecking somebody.
Yeah.
But I don't consume a whole heck of a lot of content. A lot of my stuff is historical. So I've learned more prepping knowledge from historical memoirs, biographies. Like my bug out bag for years was just a modernized version of what Daniel Boone carried.
Mm-hmm. Learn the old ways. The old ways are the best ways.
Yeah. Now it's changed a lot because of doing the grindstone deployments. You do 2 or 3 grindstone deployments, you learn immediately what is useful and what is just extra weight in your bag. We don't need all the extra comfort stuff we think we need. Most of my bag is, so it's the 5 C's that Dave Canterbury talks about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sleep kit, and the rest is pretty much food, and then a water purifier and some medical, just for safety reasons. But other than that, it's not much.
Yeah. But what's really insightful about all that is that you did it by doing things.
Yeah.
So many people with their go bags and get home bags.
And it sits in the closet and gathers dust.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
some plastic is still on the things inside.
It's like how many people actually, do anything, So for me, when I did that mini deployment, I didn't show up really with anything. Okay. And, I got corrected pretty quick, and it was good, which is part of the whole experience, but that next day that I went, I had everything except my radio. So, but I had a high vis vest that I've had for years, sitting in one of my storage bins. Okay, and I finally used it. It's like, so when I say everybody has gear that they have not used, and they've picked it up or for one reason or another. So I was really satisfied by the fact that, I saw the value of each one of those items. So kind of what you're saying, that you learned what you're doing the deployments, what you need and what you don't need. So Grindstone has been that for you. And through the years, they've done that. So they only tell you to bring these items because that's what you need.
Yeah.
and nothing else.
So my rule of thumb is, my go bag, bug out bag, whatever you want to call it, I take that on all my grindstone deployments. I take that on every backcountry camping I do, and I take it on every backcountry hunt that I do. And my rule of thumb is, if there is an item in there that I have not used in the last 3 trips, it comes out. Other than medical, obviously.
Right.
You never want to use that shit. But so, and again, you narrow it down. Now the bag I have now is pretty much the same iteration that it has been for probably a year and a half now. I did switch out some of my sleep kit. I have changed out an old accordion style sleeping pad for a new ultralight campers, like little 4-inch air mattress that folds up. It rolls up the size of an Nalgene bottle. It's awesome. $15.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing, so much better to sleep on. And then I switched out a couple of the wool blankets for some woobies. Just they fold down easier. They're a little more comfortable. I sleep hot anyway. It's Florida. A woobie's much more comfortable to sleep under than a dang wool blanket.
Oh, God.
And they're heavy.
Yeah.
So, man, that's good stuff. All right, so let's see. Now, when it comes to influencers, there's all kinds of different people that have done it. We talked about a lot of the old school people and some of the, current people and how they've transitioned and stuff. And I put together like a little list, okay, of influencers that like the sourcing, like what pool of people since my time of watching YouTube. So you have your authors, okay, that are writing prepper fiction. You got lots of veterans, Leos. For those that don't know, Leos are law enforcement officers, former cops. Okay.
Yeah. It's not a furry. It's pretending to be a lion. No,
You got some talking heads, and some of these guys wear the same hats. Okay. They were veterans or Leos. I mean, they are, but then now they're a talking head. They've evolved into, now a big category is I call Civ Mill emulators. Okay. So you'll have some guys that never served in the military, but from a young age, they grew up hunting or their family used to go shoot and stuff. And they got into a lot of the tactical stuff and they do gun reviews or they have companies, manufacturing or resellers or gun shops and stuff. And then you got your general just gear reviewers,
Brandon Herrera.
Yeah. So some of these guys will wear, and some of these gals, okay, will wear multiple hats. Okay. So it's become, it's so saturated in the space now because you can have little guys like us and we're just doing it for fun. We're just getting started or whatever. And then me and Banzai were talking about it last night. You get some guys that get enough of a following where they start doing live streams in the middle of the day, and you got people, they have like their little following. Okay. And they throw here's $5 for the super chat or, hey, we're doing giveaways. And I was saying that it's like, I really don't watch the live streams partly because I'm working, but I could a lot of times just put it on and listen to it. But there's so much nonsense going on in these live streams. They take
the first 30 minutes is like all the shout outs and everything.
And it's like no disrespect to these guys. I mean, it's their gig. I won't call it grift. We'll just call it their gig. Maybe these guys are retired or maybe they're able to do it as a part-time thing or whatever, but
or they're a trophy. Or they're a trophy.
Yeah. But for me as a consumer, and I do, and a lot of these guys got paywalls, okay, for their content. Now, I do have a couple of people that I follow, okay, that I do subscribe to. That's TJ and Bear, okay? Now, I pretty religiously watch TJ's videos.
PJ?
Okay. Huh?
PJ, Pastor Joe?
Yeah, Pastor Joe, yeah. I mean, wait a minute.
TJ is fair.
Yeah. Why do I keep calling him T? Yeah, so PJ, okay, I'll watch him pretty religiously, okay? Now, I used to watch a lot of Bear back in the day, but a lot of Bear's content now is expanded, you know? He has his, like, Bible studies and all his different things, and he does his live streams too and everything. He's good about taking questions from the people and stuff. So, and it's successful for him. But for me, I consume so much DIY now, which is part of the issue I have with a lot of these other influencers, is that I want to learn how to do something. So if you're talking about building community, a mag, a team, or CERT or something like that, I'm all ears. That's on my radar. But just listening to somebody for the sake of listening to somebody, that is just not in my wheelhouse, But there's a lot of people that, have the time, they're retired, they're older or disabled, or just, work nights instead of days, or they just like that content. So everyone teaches his own. There's plenty of content out there. But I find it a little challenging in the space because, if you're doing it as a business, you cannot help but be influenced by it, So you self-censor, okay, because your revenue depends on it, So some guys will stick to where, well, I got the YouTube, but if you want the real skinny where I'm not censored, go to my Patreon or Rumble and subscribe. Now, if it's like, hey, it's $1 or $2 a month or something, and I really dig your content, okay, I'm cool. But man, some of these guys, I mean, and City Prepping, I think, is charging like $10 or $13 a month for his community and stuff. Now, I totally respect the guy. I learned a lot from him, and I've consumed a lot of his content, and he's helped me a lot of times with solar. But I don't want to really have a paywall to go, because what I still see on YouTube from him in particular, the signs are here, things are close, and you go in there and he's saying stuff that I already know. I mean, because I'm such a vast consumer of this content that I'm already sold, So maybe he's marketing other people to bring in, or people that just want to be in his community. Hey, more power to you. But that's some of the challenges that I face. And, I'm not criticizing anybody, even though it might sound like it, is I'm just trying to give some examples where sometimes it seems like it's too big now, where it's fragmented, but it's also too big. And it's too big because too many people are talking about go bags.
Right.
It's becoming, there's fatigue now. Because
no one has to worry about me having a paywall, because if I ever have a paywall, it's going to be for OnlyFans. But yeah, no one wants to see that. So, Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
I got to be me.
Yeah. So what do you guys think after I've said all that?
Yeah, like I said, I don't consume a whole heck of a lot of it. On the other side of it, so I've gotten to know TJ, Bear Independent, a little bit from doing the deployments and things like that. And I am super close with some people that he's super close with. So we've got to sit down on more than a couple occasions. I forget that, that's his job, is to be the internet guy.
Yeah.
So like the other day, we come in from working, I'm half falling asleep at the dinner table. Next thing I know, he just starts talking. I look over, he started a live stream. He shoves the camera in my face. Here, talk to the people. I got to go take a piss. And so I'm sitting here talking for like 5 minutes about hurricanes. And I was like, dude, I'm not even awake right now. I don't even know if it made any sense, And so it's weird on that sense, but in the same sense, I was talking with another buddy. He was like, he kind of hates the fanboys that show up for the deployments, and we were talking about, it's like, yeah, but the guys who show up because they watched your content, or whatever. It's like, now some people get weird about it. That's not cool, but like, we were all there because we enjoyed his content for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So it's to take that into account as well. And like you said, things evolve over time. How many times can you put videos out about putting rice in buckets or starting a fire, like you said?
Right.
So
and that's the value that Bear, see, and it's a good thing you brought that up. PJ never really teaches that stuff.
correct.
Okay. Bear, okay, the reason I watched him so much before, because he was teaching about putting food up, the pillars of the prepper classroom and all that stuff. Where that's not what PJ does. PJ's a different kind of content. So I don't know if, because I consume so much of PJ for the philosophy and the insight, that I don't get that from Bear, because I'm limited on how much content I'm going to consume per se. But those two guys I do really respect and like what they think, and I try to emulate it to the extent that I'm willing and able to do. Has your idea or outlook on Bear and PJ changed from before deploying the grindstone to after?
100%. 100%. I have always been super skeptical of everybody. That's just how I am as a person. So if I see someone on the internet, it's like, okay, cool. As soon as that camera shuts off, they're an entirely different person. They are, both of them, wonderful individuals. Just as far as people goes, they're genuinely nice people. PJ, I've had the pleasure of only having a handful of conversations with. I don't know him on a personal level by any means, but every conversation I've had with him, he is truly engaged in the conversation. He wants to hear what I have to say, and he reciprocates. He's a cool dude to talk to. Same way with TJ. He is interested in you. If you give him that level of respect, he will give you that level of respect. Now, what I think a lot of people don't realize, because you don't see it on camera, TJ, Bear Independent, is got to be one of the hardest working individuals I've ever met in my life. He, between all of his businesses and the ministries and things of that nature that he does, it's insane. And also see a lot of the, you've got to do this on the internet videos, but what you don't see is when the camera's off, that he's sitting holding hands and praying with tears running down his face while he prays with this woman who just lost her house. Or he's crying with the dude who just lost the house his kids were born in because he's been on this property for 50 years. I've gotten to see a lot of that side of him. The first time I met him, I'm expecting Bear from the internet, this big, burly, hardcore dude. And he's on the phone. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. He's already getting logistics planned out. He's barking orders. Hey, you need to do this, and you need to do that. You need to do this. And he turns around with the biggest smile. TJ Morris, man, how you doing? Nice to meet you. And it's cool to see I don't want to call it a persona, because everything you see on the videos is definitely him. It's just a facet of him that is not full time, just like with any of us. I don't the same way at home with my wife and kids that I do at work to my employees. I don't act the same way to my employees that I would to a customer. We all have different facets of life. he is a super well-rounded individual. Definitely a workaholic.
Yes.
Definitely a workaholic. He's done way better. Also, first meeting him to knowing him today is a whole different guy, too. So in the beginning, super workaholic, hardcore, did everything himself. Recently, he's done really well at disseminating task, stepping back. Okay, you take control of this, you take control of that, and he just steps back and aids when needed. Yeah, I have gained respect for both of them since meeting them.
See, based on your stories and stuff, it's like it shows the authenticity of them and how the business of influencing, okay, is not change them for in negative ways, but only enhanced their positive attributes. Like with Bear, all his businesses and stuff, and all his people, okay, they all run all his businesses. And so he's providing jobs for people, with Grindstone, with Caleb House. So he's taking his influence and not going and buying a McMansion, okay, and fancy cars and stuff like that. He's putting together businesses, building jobs, okay, that help support all these charitable functions, which is, awesome. I mean, I wish more influencers were willing and able. They might be willing, but not be able to do it, but we're willing and able to do that. It really does a positive impact in the preparedness community, okay, and in the normie community. I think it wins hearts and minds, and the people he ends up helping out are the ones that are really in the need.
Yeah.
It's not like some pajama class guy that lives in a suburb, okay, who's got money, his insurance is going to cover, he's going to go live in a hotel, okay. He's helping these rural people, okay, who may not even have insurance on their house because it's been paid off. It's generational, and what have you. So,
yeah, and to touch on, like the authenticity we're talking about, they really do, practice what they preach, so to speak. They live that lifestyle. Again, being with a lot of these guys and being close with a lot of people they're close with, they do live in community. They live, all the people who run his businesses and work with Grindstone and Caleb House and these other organizations. A lot of those guys live either on property or close to his property, either in RVs or tiny homes or things of that nature. He himself lives in a manufactured home. I think it's a double wide. Yeah. But like Pastor Joe, my living room is probably the size of Pastor Joe's house, maybe a little smaller than it. I got to, a few years ago, go hang out with them and butcher chickens with his wife. And it's hilarious to me what modern Americans think we need. It's like, I need the 2,000 square foot house. I need this, I need that. I need a giant shed and barn. No, you don't. And, you talk to him and it's like his house is for sleeping and cooking.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to be in a house for. I need to sleep. I need to cook. Everything else, I got stuff to do. Yeah. I'm going to go do.
A big workshop would be more practical than having a bigger house.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Talking about like sieve mill emulators. Trying to think here, who would be a good example. T-Rex Arms, maybe? Is that young guy? Do you guys follow T-Rex Arms?
No, I don't know that one.
Yeah, there's several young guys. They're like in their late teens, early 20s and stuff. Now these guys, they seem like they're good shooters. They do training or they manufacture ARs and stuff like that, or accessories and do mods. I think but they've never been a cop or never been in the military and stuff. But these guys are pretty knowledgeable, and I do enjoy some of their content. But I wonder how many of these Civ Mill influencers are authentic.
Right.
I mean, you can make any kind of training like you go, ooh, ah, I mean, let me give you an example. Okay. Terran Tactical. Okay. Guy's very popular business, does weapons training for all the movie stars and stuff like that. So quick. You watch some of his videos. I mean, the stuff that he does with a pistol, it's just amazing. But I don't know. This is not a criticism on Terran, okay? But I don't know if that equates to combat. We watch John Wick, and we see Keanu Reeves. I mean, who's black belt in multiple forms of martial arts, and that dude trains when it comes to firearms and stuff. And then doing all those movies and stuff like that. But Terran Tactical being that guy, I don't know what his background is. I don't know if he was former military, former cop, or just a guy who was in the guns.
I believe just a competitive shooter.
Yeah. And so does competitive shooting equate to a gunfight?
Right. Does it translate to where if the shit hits the fan, is it going to actually be of any use?
Right.
I think a lot of that, so it depends wildly on, are you a one-man show or are you in a team? So the reason we probably don't see the military training guys like Terran Tactical trains guys is because the military focuses on team insertions, team building, team working, where, the movies, it's always the one gunman. It's the John Wicks who are running through bells, taking everybody out,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool to be really fast and it's cool to be able to shoot from the hip and do all that stuff. But the dynamics of working around other people, are you spinning around and flagging a dude with your rifle because he's 2 steps behind you? Are you pointing a rifle at the back of his calf when you're against the stack? All the things I mentioned earlier, the muzzle blast of 3 guys in line firing, different things like that. So I think it depends on the purpose. Is any of the John Wick style, Terran Tactical style stuff going to translate over? I'm sure some of it will. I did and I always forget the acronym, ISPC, the shooting that Vic does.
Yeah, it's a USCPA, because there's IDPA, which I've done.
I think IDPA is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I used to do that, or have done that, because it's focused from drawing from concealed. So I use that as a mock-up, artificial stress, because the timer is a stressor. Obviously not as big a stress as there's a dude with a gun, but artificial stress is still stress. So I would do the IDPAs for that kind of concealed carry training. So you get some guys in there who they've got staccatos and these awesome race guns, and they're wearing their, vest covers. I went in with my concealed carry, wearing what I wore every day to make it as realistic as possible. Walk through, figure out what the course of fire is, and then treat it as a real world scenario. You can do that to help. Another thing that I like to do is if I'm standing online, I will turn 90 degrees. I have the luxury of, I got a shooting range on my property, so I can be a little more fluid than being at a range, where I'll be standing off or walking parallel to the target, and I'll have my wife or whoever's out there training with me scream out a target at random, and I will have to turn, draw, fire on that target, and then move to cover. So, because realistically, what's the chances the guy, whoever the assailant may be, is going to be standing square in front of you, not moving, and you're going to be standing there in the open and firing? It's not going to happen. You know?
Exactly.
So I like to do it from different positions. I like to do it whilst moving. Always
shoot, move.
Yep.
That's how we train as well. The shoot and move, shooting from cover, shooting from concealment, on the ground, like different things that can be used. Shooting from a vehicle, shooting into a vehicle, shooting out of a vehicle. It's all those things. I mean, especially in a state like Florida, where we have, stand your ground. We have castle doctrine, which extends to your vehicle. Yep. And if you have never shot a firearm in or from a vehicle, you're in for a rude awakening the first time you have to do that.
I mean, a funny vehicle story for you. We were moving around a vehicle, coming up over the bed of the truck and firing from the bed. And my buddy's shooting and he's missing. And he can't understand why he's missing. It's like we can hear impact, but there's no holes on target. He's got a red dot. So he's looking through his red dot to see downrange, to see his target. But the height over bore, he was shooting through the bed of the truck.
Through the wall.
Catching the other side of the bed. Just wasn't something he thought about, because every time he fired, it's standing on a flat range. He had never had to work around obstacles. There's an old Paul Harrell video where he talks about using a handgun, and he's leaned against cover and he pulls the trigger and it gets stuck. The shell bounces and stovepipes his gun. And he's talking about that you don't want to lean against a tree or a post or whatever it is, whether it be rifle, shotgun, pistol, whatever, anything semi-automatic. You don't want something to impede your bullet. But same with like the height over bore. You don't want to have a perfect sight picture, but your barrel's 3 inches lower and you're going to be punching through the bed of your truck or your hood or whatever it may be. And like you were talking about, the first time you fire a gun and you're inside a vehicle, it's like getting punched in the side of the head.
Yeah.
Even if you're wearing ear pro, like you're done for a second. Little things like that people just either don't expect or they'll downplay them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've brought it up a couple of times, but it's a really big thing with people firing a rifle next to somebody firing a rifle, and that muzzle blast hitting you, or if you're like a foot in front of them and that muzzle blast is just beating you up. It's unsettling.
And catching brass.
Yeah.
Now, some of the training to help with, like you're saying, like shooting down below. There's a training board that like people build where you are standing up, like you could shoot at different levels, shoot through different shaped obstacles in the thing, from standing to crouching to kneeling to being on the floor. Those things are fun, but they open your eyes in terms of, how do you shoot if you're trying to lay on your side and shoot through this gap and not hit the board, and you're still trying to use your sights. It's fun training, but it's really tough.
And you're not in a comfortable position when you're doing a lot of those shots, which is how it would be in real life.
You're, actually like laying on your mags that are on your side, or your IFAK, or this, that, or the other. You know, you see these guys, they've got these awesome, like, you know, rigs, and then they got a ton of mags and stuff on their chest. Standing up, that's fine. Now go prone. And the stuff is like making you off the ground because you got this huge, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's all those things that you have to like take into account. And the old saying, you know, train like you fight like you train. So, I mean, if all you do is stand and shoot at paper targets, don't move, don't do this, that, and the other, then the first time something really does happen, you're not going to know what to do. You're going to shut down. Your brain's just going to go,
Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of people say, and we talked about it earlier about people shooting at you, but just imagine the guys that were in Iraq or Afghanistan or any other conflict zone, and they're all shooting side by side. So, I mean, if your first time in country and you've only hit the range, you know, and you're just beginning to be a fleet Marine, and then you get rotated out to Iraq, and that first firefight happens. I mean, you're in a Humvee, either side, you're sticking your rifle outside the window. It's echoing in, like you were saying, even with the Air Pro. Then you get out. I mean, and how do you communicate? You know, now a lot of those guys still have the Air Pro connected to either their bump helmet or their Kevlar, but I've never. I mean, so unless it's different, I mean, I have electronic Air Pro,
right?
Okay, but I don't know if what they, you know, put out in the military is better. Like if it squanders a higher decibel. So if that's mil spec, you know.
That's why almost every combat vet I know, their ears are constantly ringing, like mine. But that's because I've been around it for so long. I mean, even right now, if I go quiet, that is constant. I've done some damage.
So it's not gunfire, but doing the grindstone stuff. So we all run radios. I run a shoulder mic to keep it right up here. Chainsaws and heavy equipment constantly run
loud.
So I double layer Ear Pro. I have external muffs on my hard hat, but I also put in the little orange squishies, and it always starts that way. And then in 1 hour in, I'm taking my right ear orange squishy out because I can't hear on the shoulder mic. And you constantly see guys who have their right earmuff popped up or thrown to the side just so we can communicate with each other. Because, yeah, it's difficult with all that noise going around.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And, you know, some of us older guys, us Gen Xers, I mean, come on, how many concerts did we go to back in the day? And, you know, Kiss, Iron Maiden, you know, I'm still ringing from those concerts.
Yeah.
AC/DC, you know. And did we wear any kind of protection? No, like dummies. I mean, I remember like the next day, literally, you could not hear anything because it was so loud. You're just like talking extra loud for about 2 or 3 days, and people are like, "Why are you yelling?" I'm not yelling.
And if you're not at a concert, you're in your room and got your speakers on either side of your bed.
Your tower speakers back in the day, yeah?
Yeah, craziness.
We've done so much damage to ourselves.
All right, so let's round this out with any kind of final thoughts or, you know, tidbits you guys want to chat about.
Final thoughts. Tune into the Banzai Prepping Podcast weekly on Spotify, iHeart, you know, all the different ones.
Yeah, I will make sure. Yes. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes for the Banzai Prepping Podcast, and it's a good listen. All kinds of different topics go on. I won't spoil it for anybody, but give it a good listen.
Okay, for those that just so that you know, the show does vary. Times when I go solo, it'll be mellow, it'll be to the point, teaching or news type stuff. We do have guests on. Sometimes guests like Dominic or like Brendan, and we get serious about stuff and we have a little fun. We joke around here and there. Then we have some of our recurring guests, and we sometimes partake a little bit too much of the nectar, and the shows get very fun. But we do that too to lighten things up, because if you're always serious and stressed, it gets boring and dark, and we like to have fun sometimes too. And some of the guys are vets and Leos, so there's a lot of dark humor in drinking and stuff. So it's a big mix. I mean, from serious topics and content to guys just having fun too. It's a mix.
Oh yeah. I have to say, and that's a great way to explain it. We've talked about being authentic and not regurgitating the same old content points, about other influencers. That's one thing about the Banzai Prepping Podcast that I like and I think is interesting. It's not routine. You never know what you're going to get and what crazy things they're going to talk about. So just, give it a good shot. Watch a couple episodes. I think you guys will like it. And if not, put some comments in here and let me know, and I'll pass it on to Banzai. Say, hey, cut that crap out or do something else. But no, I mean, and we'll have Banzai on in the future. Like I said earlier in the podcast, we owe it to Banzai for us to take the chance on us and to bring us on his show. And we caught the bug, and he's been supportive ever since. So we love hanging out and chatting with him, and we'll definitely have him on many times in the future.
Definitely.
All right, Brendan, what about you, buddy?
It was a good one. So not a whole lot on my end. You know me. I like to feed off people, feed off you, feed off Banzai. So
yeah, that's one thing. I've mentioned this before. The times that we've been on Banzai's, either together or Brendan was on by himself. Banzai and I tend to speak a lot during the podcast. But let me tell you, when Brendan does speak, okay, it's quality. And
yes.
And if you think you missed something, hit pause, rewind, because he has good, when he speaks, it's quality, and he definitely got some great insights. Don't let him, him being quiet tonight, okay, leads you to think that he doesn't know how to talk or have good conversations, because he does. Because if he wasn't, he wouldn't be the co-host with me. So. And as these podcasts, evolve, we all get better. And, I just noticed something, in a lot of the episodes or clips that I've done from the Banzai, I was doing a lot of likes and a lot of ums. I think I hardly did any tonight.
Yeah.
I just noticed that. So I'm improving already. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like and subscribe. Share with your friends. Everything is on YouTube. I did kick off our Spotify. All our content will be on there within the next couple of days, so you can use those two kind of platforms. We do have social accounts on Instagram and TikTok. We just don't have any content on there. It's a different format. As we start to roll out some of our short form DIY type of content, We'll definitely be putting on those platforms. And if you're part of the community, you'll see notifications when this stuff comes out, and we'll make updates as we do each episode. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope everyone has a great week. Please remember, give us some comments and let us know how we can make the show better for you and what you want to hear about in the future. All right. You all have a good one. Let's see here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to like and subscribe and share with your friends. We will see you next time.